What's happening, APLers here with the week 3 preview. Say things look pretty pretty straightforward this week. Maybe with one exception, the Solomon and Greg matchup is nail biter. Other than that, it looks pretty straightforward. I'm sure it won't go that way, but we'll review this and see where the differences are. So first, we're going to start with Jake and Corey. Have Devontae as the leader here for Jake's squad after a nice week last week, and then the newly acquired $100 Carson Steele for Corey's here over on the right. He owns a pet alligator, crocodile, whatever the hell the difference is, but he has one. His dad got it for him, and super weird. But anyway, also his legs look super weird also in this picture. Not sure what part's weirder, but anyway. We'll get on with the breakdown here. So looking at Jake's roster, we have Lamar playing the Cowboys. Cowboys got pass defense got ripped up by Derek Carr last week for about a half, maybe 3/4, more like a half and some change. And they played Deshaun Watson in week 1, so not really a great measure. So it seems like this Cowboys-Ravens game can be a shootout. There will be some points scored. Lamar is the #1 quarterback for the week, and our scoring system projected that way by a fair margin. So looks like Lamar's a good play. Running back here, you got the hit with Pacheco out at running back too. So that's a tough blow there. The good news is Alvin Kamara has been ridiculous, like vintage Alvin Kamara so far this year. Gets to play the Eagles. They have not been great against the run. Both Jacobs and Bijan went over 100 points on them, so you got to feel really good about this Kamara matchup. The running back 2 spot, Javonte is the start for Jake. The rest of the depth at running back is not anything you probably want in your lineup. Just probably don't feel great about Javonte based on what the Broncos offense overall has done. He had 24 points in week 1, 70 last week. Majority of that 70 is in the receiving game. The Bucs have been getting beat up pretty bad on the ground. The Lions ripped them apart last week with Gibbs and Montgomery. Brian Robinson was over 100 points in week 1, so the matchup seems solid. Just not sure if that offense is any good. So not sure there's a lot of upside there. At wide receiver, Devontae had a really nice week last week. Just wonder if that's going to be the game script this week. They passed a ton against the Ravens last week. They're playing the Panthers this week. Not a great matchup on the wide receiver side because the Panthers are awful, and you don't have to pass them because you're winning like really early in the game. They also played the Chargers last week, who don't want to pass the ball and didn't need to. So maybe that's the case here for Devontae. So I think the upside is limited a little bit. Tyreek has a new quarterback who sucks really bad. And his splits with him in the past when Tua has been out are not good. So 93 points, it's Tyreek. So, he gets deep once, maybe twice in a game, and the top can come off. And that's always there with him. You just are really concerned based on the quarterback. Played on the road in Seattle. Seattle tossed ball around quite a bit last week, so maybe that's a good game environment. They do have the #1 rank against wide receivers, but they played Denver and New England, so don't think it really means anything. Just worried about the upside with Tyreek. Ridley looked alive last week. Had a really good score. He had 131 points after 51 in week 1. Only 6 targets, 4 catches. He had a rush, so maybe there's some stuff there. Just wonder, similar to Devontae, this is going to be a run game for the Packers. They're going to try to grind the clock, so there's a lot of upside, but 71 points is probably all right for Ridley. Hunter Henry was awesome last week, terrible this week. 20 points on Thursday night. It's not a great start for Jake there. The rest of this kicker, it's got the Saints kicker, new acquisition this week in the Eagles game. Seems like a good environment, and the IDPs all look solid. So on the Corey side, we got like a lot happening on Sunday Night Football for Corey here. Look at Corey's lineup here a little bit differently. So we have Mahomes, Carson Steele, Darnell Mooney, and an IDP all going on Sunday night. So we got hope that that game is fun. The projections for those guys aren't ridiculous. Mahomes has 324, which he's kind of been struggling to do so far this year. Their offense hasn't been as fun as you'd hope it would be. They had 326 in week one, and 218 last week, where they really didn't throw the ball very well against the Bengals. So you'd hope that that can happen more against the Falcons. They're kind of middle of the road so far through 2 weeks. And what they're defending, they played Justin Fields in week one. Hurts had a decent week last week against him. So we're just hoping for the upside there on Mahomes, that he can deliver more than 324, that the Falcons offense can be somewhat scary. It's not really at all through a couple weeks, but maybe that is a thing that could turn into scoring some points there. They also don't have Pacheco to hand the ball to all game long. So I just wonder if they're going to turn to the pass more, start using Kelsey, and have to pass because they can't run. That would be bad for Corey because he needs Carson Steele to run. So he just wants the overall Chiefs offense to go crazy. Josh Jacobs against the Titans. It's fine. Josh Jacobs has been really good so far this year. So over 100 points both games. Titans are middle of the road in the points allowed to running back. We played the Bears, and the Bears are just an embarrassing week in week one. But they got shredded last week by Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. Almost both went over 100 points there. So I feel like the Jacobs matchup is really good. DJ Moore against the Colts, that matchup too. The Colts have been getting off the field like almost immediately on offense. So the opposing team's defense, or the opposing team's offense, runs a ton of plays. So it should be a lot of opportunity for DJ Moore. Caleb Williams has looked pretty bad. That offense has looked pretty bad through 2 weeks, but maybe this is the spot to get it right, because the Colts have definitely been really, really, really good environment for receivers to do well. The other two receivers are, you're hoping for some stuff to happen here for these guys to be effective. Tyler Johnson, somebody's got to take over the Cooper Kupp role, or the Puka Nacua role. Maybe it's Tyler Johnson. Corey's taking a shot here to see if that could be. The Rams should be behind the whole game. They're going to need pass. 49ers are probably going to beat them pretty loud. So 40 points is you don't need too much to get to 40 points. And you're hoping that he's the answer there and can do more than that. Mooney, I talked about him last week. He had a nice game on Monday night. And you're hoping for more of that. A deep shot against the Chiefs. Chiefs defense is tough. But maybe they'll be focused on London, and Mooney can get free here. Corey's without Kittle at tight end. Jake also without Njoku at tight end. So both guys are missing their starting tight ends from the season. Cole Kmet is the start here. Kind of the same story as DJ Moore. Sure, the Bears are going to run more plays than normal. We'll probably pass the ball more than normal. It's looked pretty bad so far. So Corey also has the Kittle backup, and Saubert, I think is how you say his name or something. So maybe he just gets a bunch of passes, but maybe they don't have to pass. I don't know. 53 points is projection here. Kickers and defenses. Defense looks a little worse than Jake's, but it doesn't matter too much. So when you break all this down, Jake comes out a little bit on top. So I'm going to go with Jake, moving to 3-0. Corey's going to have his work cut out for him. He has the 4 Sunday night game guys and the 2 Monday night game guys. So he's going to know what he needs to go get. We'll see if those guys can go get it, but I think the Sunday night game will underwhelm and wreck Corey's week. So Jake moving to 3-0, Corey to 1-2. Next matchup, so Ryan against Daggy. So run through Ryan's lineup here. Josh Allen on Monday night against the Jags. They're at home. I think it's just tough to know what we're going to get from Josh Allen. We get week 1 Josh Allen, where he does everything because they get down in the first half and they have to pass the whole second half and just go crazy. And then last week they get ahead and he doesn't need to pass at all. So what happens in this Jags game? Jags haven't looked too good so far, so love the upside. 320 is the number. Running backs here for Ryan. Rashad White got banged up last week. It looks like he's going to be fine. Still feel a little bit iffy if he's going to be completely effective. Looks like he's not on the injury report. Broncos have been susceptible to the run. Ken Walker got him pretty good in week 1, and then Najee and Jalen Warren did fine against him last week, so should be able to move the ball as long as he's involved. ETN against Buffalo is a little different story. Just wonder how ETN had 71 in week 1, 81 in week 2. So where's the upside on that? The Bills got beat up by James Conner in week 1 and then HN in week 2. So they can be run on. Wide receiver, the matchups here I think are really good. Jamar Chase, if he's not going to do it this week, then is he ever going to do it? Like the question we have about the super team. If not now, when? So Chase gets the Commanders. He gets T. Higgins back, so maybe some coverage away from him. The Commanders haven't been able to cover anybody yet this season. Great spot. Got to produce there. Chris Godwin has been unstoppable so far this season. Really great pick for Ryan here in a later round pickup for Godwin. That game environment isn't probably going to force the Bucks to pass a ton because the Broncos are pretty shitty. But still should be a target hog. And then JSN might have had his breakout game last week where he just becomes a consistent thing here. Just really depends if the Dolphins can provide any sort of sustainable offense that makes the Seahawks have to pass the ball. Ryan's got Ertz in here at tight end against the Bengals on Monday night. Ferguson is back. Just wonder if Ferguson gets put in the lineup here instead of Ertz. Ertz is fine, just not providing like a huge amount of upside there. Then kickers and defense. Defense looks maybe a little below average from what other teams are getting projected at, but doesn't amount to a huge amount of points. On the Daggy side of the ball, got Kyler in one of the best games of the game environments of the week against the Lions. So you gotta like the upside there. The Lions can definitely be passed against better. Their run defense is really good. Pass defense is less good. 26th. So like really good matchup there for Daggy. Saquon against the Saints, another really good game matchup. It should be fun. Don't have anything bad to say about Saquon. It's been really good so far this year. Just crushing. Should be fine. Wide receiver. So we have Mike Evans going to get locked up against Patrick Surtain. May limit the upside as well as maybe not the need to pass. Limits the upside on Mike Evans there. DK against the Dolphins. Kind of talked about that with JSN too. How much are they going to need to pass? We saw last week that all it takes is 1 from DK to put up a big number. So that potential is always there. Just don't love that environment the most. And then Amon was back to himself last week. Got banged up at the end of the game, but seems like he should be fine. Really nice spot in that game against the Cardinals there. So Daggy also missing his tight end. Evan Ingram is out this week. Schultz fills in and just hopes to get a few passes trickle his way after those 3 receivers do their part. Schultz had 35 in week 1 and 44 in week 2, so he's not seeing the ball a whole lot. Maybe that changes against the Vikings. With Mixon out, maybe they pass a lot more and he gets a few more shots, but not feeling like he can put up a huge number. Kickers and defenses are there, and add it all up, and it looks like we have a Daggy win. Daggy moves to 3-0. I just think the game scripts for Daggy are favorable. You get Kyler and Amon-Ra in a really good environment, and then the Saquon game too. So those are like the big guys for Daggy are in good spots. And not sure that Josh Allen and Rashad White and Godwin are. So just think that there's a little more potential for Daggy's guys to go off. Next matchup is Tank against the super team. So we have Charbonnet in the lineup this week over 2nd round pick Kyron. And we have Brock Bowers in the lineup this week. The number 1 scoring tight end after 2 weeks. in our scoring system. Finally gets a start over third round pick. Kyle Pitts. So kind of fun for both of those guys. So look at the lineups here, maybe. Tank obviously has two out, so we're rolling with Sam Darnold against Houston. Seems like a decent shot here. Darnold's been fine. 260 in week one, they didn't need to pass. 347 last week against the 49ers. Pretty solid. Texans played Anthony Richardson, gave up 327 in week one, and they played Caleb Williams last week for 221. So I don't think you can really tell anything from either of those. Just seems like the Vikings Texans game should be plenty of offense, and Darnold should have to move the ball. So 299 seems a little like a low spot to me. Charbonnet against the Dolphins. So Tank's got a pick here between Aaron Jones, Kyron Williams, and Charbonnet. So Charbonnet got like all the touches last week, 19 touches, and resulted in 69 total yards and a touchdown. Not great, but now he gets to play the Dolphins. They gave up good games to ETN and Bigsby in week one. James Cook ripped them last week, and they're missing Tua. So seems like a good spot for Charbonnet to run the ball out, get a ton of touches, and do really well. James Cook's in the lineup every week, gets to play the Jags. They've been all right against the run so far. Achan got him in week one, but last week they played Cleveland. They didn't do too much. So, but just James Cook is just good, so he'll be in a good spot. Kyron is out of the lineup, plays the 49ers, and doesn't have an offensive line or any wide receivers. So it seems like a good fade to not have him in. And Aaron Jones against the Texans, it's a toss-up between him and Charbonnet. Just know that Charbonnet is going to get all the touches, and the game environment should probably be better. So makes sense. The wide receiver spot, Zay Flowers against the Cardinals, against the Cowboys looks good. 77 points seems pretty low there. Just think there's going to be a lot of points scored in that game, and Zay's going to touch the ball a lot. He has double-digit targets both weeks so far this year. Should be solid. CeeDee Lamb potentially in a blow-up spot here. You'd like to see him just go crazy. He's been solid, but just hasn't gone crazy yet this year. Feels like this is a really good spot for him. Jaden Reed against the Titans, I have a lot good to say about that. He has Malik Willis throwing the ball. That's not a positive thing at all. Maybe he gets loose on a rush or something like that, but one of the other options we have here are Michael Pittman and Demarcus Robinson. I'm not sure that they're any better, so that's fine. Dalton Kincaid, just do more is what the word would be there. So worry that they're not going to pass a whole lot. And they seemed to target him right away last week, and then it just kind of fell off from there. So 6 targets through 2 weeks is not what we're looking for at Dalton Kincaid. So it feels like the upside isn't there. And they should do well at home against the Jags and not really need to pass the ball a lot. So not feeling good. There's a ton of upside there. Defense looks good. Jake Moody, maybe you can have another week one game. More week one, last week too. Would be good. On the Ross side of the ball, everything looks pretty good. Super team should roll this week. We got Burrow going in against the Commanders on Monday Night Football instead of Jared Goff against the Cardinals. So I think you could question this one a little bit. The Washington matchup is excellent for Burrow. Washington is quite bad against the pass. Baker had 414 against him, and then even Daniel Jones had 266 against him last week. So it's a good matchup. The only concern there is if they get ahead by enough, do they stop throwing the ball? And I'd like to think that the Lions-Cardinals game should be a lot of scoring back and forth there. So maybe that is a really good environment for Goff. But understand the matchup there with the Commanders is good for Burrow. The running back side, I don't have a lot to choose from here. It's either going to be Jordan Mason and Jahmyr Gibbs, or it's David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, or some Detroit running back mixed with Jordan Mason. Mason's been the rushing side of the Christian McCaffrey equation has been all Mason, and he's been good. Rams defense is really bad, and their offense might be even worse. So this looks like a really good spot for Mason. And Jahmyr Gibbs against the Cardinals, talked about that game environment being really good. He seemed like he was the guy for most of the second half. He was getting a lot more touches than he did in week one. His upside's always elite. Nico is the number one for the Texans. See if Flores' defense can do anything to shut him down, but seems like a easy plug-in every week. Wide receiver. There, he's been just really good so far this year. Chris Olave, this is going to get a lot of hype that this is the week that Olave breaks out. The Eagles' pass defense has been suspect. And are the Saints actually going to need to play for more than a half this week, which they haven't had to do so far this year? Eagles' defense is the worst in the league against the pass. They got Jaden Reed in week one. Mooney in London had decent games against them in week two. They're giving up the most points in the league. So really good spot for Olave. And then Devonta is the target hog with AJ Brown out. So just think it looks like a really good spot for all of the super team receivers here this week. And then Brock Bowers has been the guy. He's the number one tight end, as I mentioned before. He gets the Panthers this week, so I think that's really the only thing that limits his upside. Are the Raiders just going to run the ball the whole game and not need to pass? So Bowers comes back to earth. That's I think that's the only question, but he's still probably going to start him over Pitts because Pitts doesn't look like he's it again. Kickers fine. Defense looks to be a little bit better than Tanks, and this one I think turns out to not be super close because the super team gets the win. There's just too many good matchups for the super team this week, and Tank's missing a few guys and possibly missing a few more from injury, but just overall, the super team is too much depth, too many good matchups. All right, next I think is me and Sade. So you got CJ Stroud for leading the Sade squad this week, and then no, Jameson William leading mine. If he's really the leader, that might be a problem, but he's fun anyway. So lineups here. Today gets CJ Stroud, as I mentioned, against the Vikings. Seems like a potential spot to score a ton of points. We're down our top two running backs, and we have three really good pass catchers, maybe four if you include Schultz. It just seems like a really good spot for Stroud to go nuts. He's been solid so far, just over 300 points in both games so far this year, 311 and 302. But it feels like this is the week where he proves that he was worth his third round draft capital. 325, I don't agree with. I think it's more. The running back, we have Bijan and Derrick Henry. Bijan gets a tough matchup against the Chiefs. He has still been the majority of the offense for the Falcons so far, getting 23 and 18 touches per game, and he's good. So worried about that guy doing a lot of good stuff because he can take one to the house anytime he touches it. Derrick Henry against the Cowboys. Be interested to see how this game goes. The Cowboys' run defense hasn't been great for a couple of years. It's really bad so far this year. They're second worst, crushed by Kamara last week. Jerome Ford had 95 against him in week one. So is this a spot where the Ravens can get ahead a little bit on the Cowboys and just run the ball with Henry? Could be. Today took the hit at wide receiver, losing Cooper Kupp and Debo here. So he fills in Debo's spot with Juwan Jennings. Somebody has to catch a ball for the 49ers this week. So why not Juwan Jennings? Not projected to go crazy with 56 points, but I think he'll be okay. Neighbors against the Browns. Neighbors is going to get all the targets, and always a guy that can go off. The Browns may limit his upside a little bit, kind of maybe based on game script, but their defense is good, and we'll see if he gets shadowed there, and they try to limit him because he's really the whole offense for the Giants. Today has Brian Thomas in for the third wide receiver spot. He's been, I was going to say surprisingly good. I don't know if it's super surprising, but he's been good. Hit 71 points in week one, 96 in week two. He's getting some deep passes, and doesn't seem like Christian Kirk is really alive this year there, so Thomas has taken over. And they may need to play from behind quite a bit in that game against the Bills, so there's some upside potential there. Laporta has been the forgotten man so far in the offense through 2 weeks for the Lions. He's in the great game against the Cardinals, and always a risk that he can go crazy. So Amon-Ra was this squeaky wheel, whatever. Amon-Ra got left out in week 1. They fed him in week 2. Is this Laporta's week? This week it could be. I hope he's still the forgotten man and it all goes to Jameson Williams instead, but we're about to find out. Tucker, that kicker, is good in a good game, and then the defense looks solid. On my side of the ball, we talked through most of these games already. I'm pretty heavy into that Lions Cardinals game with 3 of my pass catchers in that game, but Dak against the Ravens, I feel okay about that. Just wish that felt more confidence in Dak so far. It seems like they've been able to do a whole lot. The Ravens have given up 300-point games to Mahomes and Minshew so far this year. Just hope that that one's a fun game. Achane against the Seahawks. I'm concerned about the same thing as I mentioned about Tyreek, just that with Skylar Thompson in, then it just limits the whole offense. But Achane has been getting fed the ball a ton so far this year. Seahawks are fine. I mean, the Patriots got him quite a bit on the ground last week, but we'll see. I'm not too overly concerned about that. I still think he's about the quarterback, but he's involved in the passing game too, so should be fine. Tony Pollard is the start at running back with Mixon out. J.K. Dobbins is against the Steelers. Pretty tough matchup there. So we'll go with Pollard against the Packers. Packers have not done well against the rush so far this year. Excuse me, Saquon and Jonathan Taylor are the guys that have done well against them. So Tony Pollard is not of that caliber, but we'll take our chances here with Pollard against the Packers and hope that the matchup is good. Receiver, Rashee Rice is a weekly plug-in here, like him against the Falcons on Monday night. Jameson Williams, I feel like the deep threat is always there, and that Cardinals-Lions game is a fun one. And probably the same for Marvin Harrison, 174 points last week, and the first quarter is promising, and just hope he can continue that. Leaving Drake London and take Dell on the bench. Thought about Dell just to counteract some Stroud stuff, but if all the Stroud points go to not Dell, then that sucks. McBride has been, I think he's the number 2 tight end so far this year behind Bowers. He's been targeted a lot. I'm totally wrong. McBride is number 7 at tight end so far this year. So still feel good. He's getting targeted a lot, and I think that game should be fun, as I've talked about way too much. Kickers is fine, defense is fine, and today thinks he's dead in this one, but it's closer than he thinks. So 38-point win is what's projected here. Oh, I didn't change my shit at the bottom. So I think that just sneak away, and the receiver difference here was today with Juwan Jennings and Brian Thomas instead of being, if that was Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel, I think I'm losing this week for sure. So I think that turns out to be the difference. And then we have the matchup of the week here, Solomon versus Greg. So we have the Derek Carr led Testify squad, and then Mark Andrews in the lineup here for Greg. So Derek Carr goes against the Eagles. Fun game. Should score a lot of points. Eagles secondary, not great. Good environment for Carr. The running backs are still yucky for Solomon. Chuba against the Raiders. They're going to be like behind all the time, but maybe that's okay. Singletary goes against the Browns, another tough matchup there against the Browns. So don't see a ton of upside at running back. Garrett Wilson played on Thursday, and as Rodgers said after the game, they were just covering Garrett Wilson. Maybe Garrett Wilson's just not that good. Maybe he's not that good. That's what it seems like. 58 points. He had a touchdown to help him get those 58 points, but Solomon's hoping for more than that out of a second-round pick. JJ, I'll pull up it at the Vikings. He's not. He plays the Texans tomorrow. He's great. 117. Sounds good. Should be more. Steph Diggs against plays the Texans. Wow, this is let's just flip those two guys. Against the Vikings should be a good environment there. 68 points. Hoping for more than that. And then there's Travis Kelce. So as I mentioned earlier when talking about Mahomes for Corey, maybe the running game not having Pacheco means more passing, and maybe that means more to Kelce. Or maybe Kelce is just not part of the plan until it's really needed. Solomon needs him to be needed now, so we'll hope for that. Kickers and defenses are fine. Tony Adams had a huge week 1, and he has done nothing in weeks 2 and 3, so probably going to drop him soon. The Greg side of the ball, we get Purdy. 277 is the point projection here for Purdy. It's limited a little bit because I think it's assuming that the 49ers are just going to crush the Rams because the Rams have nothing on offense and their defense isn't very good. So maybe that's limited, that they just don't need to pass for most of the second half. James Conner against the Lions is a tougher matchup. The Lions run defense is really good. Connor's involved everywhere though, so 95 points is still a projection. And then JT gets the Bears. He's over 100 points. I'm just not sure how great of a matchup that is against the Bears. The Bears shut down Mixon and the Texans running game, last week. And but they got crushed by Pollard in week 1. So 112 seems fine. Just maybe not a huge amount of upside there. Ayuk has to be the guy this week. There's not a lot of other people to catch the ball. There's no Debo. There's no CMC. There's no Kittle. So it has to be Ayuk. This has to be the week that he goes crazy. It should be fun. Rashid Shaheed he seems like an every week starter now. And that counteracts the deep ball from Derek Carr. So if Derek Carr is going to score a ton of points, with the deep ball, Greg seems like he's going to have the guy that's going to score all those points. So it's a good balance there. Shakir for the Bills, they just may not pass the ball a ton. So maybe there's not a lot of upside there. Andrews against the Cowboys, 93 points there seems low and seems like a really good spot. So this matchup is like razor thin margins here. Projecting Greg to win by 8 points. So I'm gonna go with Greg squeezing by for win number 1, and the Purdy to Ayuk connection is the difference. And any big game that Carr has is going to be counteracted with a Shaheed. So I think Greg gets win number 1. So we'll run through the summary quick. We got Jake over Corey by 84. Daggy over Ryan by 65. Ross with a pretty healthy margin over Tank at 123. Me squeezing by Sade by 38 points. And then Greg over Solomon with 8. So that's all I have for week 3. Good luck to everybody. I hope nobody has anybody get injured this week because we've had enough of that. So talk to you guys later.